everyone. Thank you so much for joining the webinar today. So we've got some really exciting consumer insights that show how the pandemic has changed shopping behaviors in the and also how many customers want to be able to schedule appointments in different types of stores. My name is Imogen Weatherhead and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Chiellini. So we surveyed 2,000 consumers in May this year, and our main questions were focused on how the pandemic has changed the way that people shop online versus in stores. So we all know that online shopping saw a massive growth in 2020, where it grew by 36%, the highest that it's seen in 13 years. But we wanted to understand how these trends which of these trends might stay versus kind of consumers returning back to stores as the kind of threat of COVID-19 declines, as the vaccine rolls out. And we also wanted to understand, like, even with the vaccine rollout, are consumers still concerned about shopping in stores? So we surveyed consumers back in September 2020, and that was even when COVID cases were pretty low, and found that 82% of customers were avoiding non-essential stores and 33% were still avoiding essential stores. This was obviously pre-vaccine. And we found that throughout last year, obviously traffic was down, so 96% in April 2020, but still down by 34% in October 2020. So we wanted to see what this might look like this Christmas now that we've all had the vaccine. And we also wanted to understand from consumers how could, if they were concerned about shopping in stores, how could we make them less concerned about doing so? We then focused on appointment scheduling, which we've seen as a big growth area in 2021. So we've surveyed consumers directly to ask them what types of appointment they wanted to be able to schedule in which types of stores, and has this been driven by the pandemic, and how might it look after the pandemic? And also then kind of looking at what might the business case for a retailer be in offering appointment scheduling services. So some of our key findings, just to summarize, were that online growth is here to stay. Customers are eager to return to non-essential stores, but they do need confidence to do so. And appointments are also here to stay. So we asked consumers, kind of focusing on the change in trends, how customers feel about shopping in stores. We asked them during the pandemic compared to before the pandemic, how they felt about shopping, how their shopping habits had changed. So we found that online shopping has grown. So 47% of people said that during the pandemic, they were more likely to shop in stores compared to before the pandemic, which mirrors the insight that online shopping grew by 36% in April 2020. We also found that essential physical retail had grown. So 46% of customers said that during the pandemic, they were more likely to visit essential shops than they were before the pandemic. And non-essential physical retail had been the hardest hit. So only 34% of customers said they were more likely to visit non-essential stores, and 27% that said that they were less likely to do so. But then we asked them what they thought they were going to do kind of after the pandemic as the vaccine rolled out. And we found that online shopping will still continue to grow, but slightly slower. So 42% of consumers said they were more likely to shop for essential and non-essential products online compared to the 49% during. So people still plan to shop in online more after the pandemic than they did before the pandemic occurred. Essential physical retail growth will slow, so only 36% plan to be more likely to visit essential shops compared to 46% during the pandemic. And non-essential physical retail will bounce back. So 43% said that they are more likely to visit non-essential stores, as opposed to kind of, you only just had that 34% during the pandemic. So customers want to return back to non-essential physical retail stores, which is a good thing. And particularly interesting, we found that younger age groups, so the millennial, Gen Z and Gen Z demographic here after the pandemic, were the most likely to want to return to non-essential stores, which was interesting. We also saw that baby boomers plan to visit non-essential stores still to a high degree, though not quite as much. And all generations are equally likely to continue with their increased online shopping habits. So kind of pretty much equal after the pandemic as compared to before the pandemic, which is really interesting to see that baby boomers still plan to shop online as much after the pandemic as during the pandemic. So in 2020, we also surveyed customers as to what concerns them when they were shopping in stores. And these insights help us to understand how retailers can better prepare for customers and to give them confidence to come back to stores. So mask wearing was a massive one. So 56% of customers want other people to be wearing masks. 55% were concerned about getting too close to other people. 45% were concerned about touching products and surfaces that others have touched, and 28% were concerned about having to wear masks themselves. So interestingly, then what this kind of shows is that retailers could keep mask policies in place, and that would give most customers, more than half, some confidence. Helping find ways to reduce customers needing to get too close to other people is important. We found that a quarter of customers were concerned about waiting in line inside or outside of stores. So finding ways to kind of eliminate friction points and queuing where people end up getting a bit too close to each other in the stores. We also found that obviously, because it was the younger, more digitally savvy consumers who are most eager to return to stores, we found that in our surveys, we've consistently found that they have greater customer experience expectations, and they want retailers to use digital tools to manage their experience. So retailers could look to tools to better manage customers, be it appointment scheduling, queue management, door side, click and collect, curbside pickup. We also kind of looked at queuing, because obviously that's kind of some of our bread and butter. And we found that 42% of consumers said that they are more likely to be concerned about queuing within stores during the pandemic. And even after the pandemic, 36% of customers expect that they'll be more concerned by queuing in stores compared to how they felt about queuing before the pandemic. So this suggests that consumers will be more concerned about queuing, and that's driven by the pandemic. And again, we looked at that by age generation, and we found that Millennial and Gen Z customers were 28% more likely to be concerned by waiting in line during the pandemic, and 36% more likely after the pandemic. So actually, you can see the Millennial Gen Z customers, they are more likely than baby boomers, both during and after the pandemic, to be concerned by waiting in line compared with baby boomers. So again, it kind of shows these digitally, like younger, more digitally savvy customers, they are more concerned about their health, but they're also more eager to get back to stores, and they're the most likely to want to be managed via digital tools. So these are all areas that appointment scheduling, curbside pickup, and virtual queuing systems can help with. We also wanted to understand from customers how they expect their shopping habits will then change as the vaccine rolls out. And we found that 30% said that they were more likely to visit stores more often as the vaccine rolled out. 24% said they would be happier visiting stores that monitor the vaccine, so which customers have had the vaccine, so vaccine passports, which is interesting. And interestingly, only 17% plan to reduce their online shopping habits. So that trend, that kind of online growth, is very much here to stay, and that's what our insights have consistently shown. We also broke down our audience by customers who believe in that COVID-19 is real versus those who don't. So 74% of our survey respondents said that they believe COVID-19 was a real issue. 17% said that they didn't, and the rest said that they'd rather not say. So we found that customers who believe that COVID-19 was real were much more likely to visit stores more often after the pandemic as the vaccine rolls out. So it shows that it is definitely something that is prohibiting customers from visiting stores because they are concerned. We also found, interestingly, that older generations were less likely than younger generations to reduce their online shopping habits as the vaccine rolled out. So that was quite interesting. So I will do less online shopping than I have during the pandemic. So older generations were kind of more likely to stick with the online shopping, whereas the younger generations over here were more likely to visit stores. So again, you've got younger generations more eager to return to the physical store. We found that when we asked customers like which types of businesses they wanted to monitor which customers have had vaccines before or not, so COVID passports, we found that airline and transport companies were definitely the highest. We've got 37% there. then restaurants 30%, nightclubs and bars at 27%, and you've got retail and banks down here at 20% for essential and 17% for non-essential. So it does show, although the stats are lowest, and I don't think vaccine passports are necessarily in retail, but there is like 1 in 5 customers who think that it is it's still definitely a deterrent, and some things need to be done to improve their experience and make them feel confident in stores, if they're to go as far to say that retailers should even monitor vaccine passports. We also found that younger generations were more likely the younger generations were more likely than baby boomers to want retailers to monitor which customers have had their vaccine, which was interesting. And again, so consistently our insights will show that the younger generations are more concerned about their health than the older generations, which is interesting considering scientifically they are less at risk of COVID-19. We then asked customers how long they expect to be concerned about shopping in stores for. And we found that half of customers said that they expect to be concerned for up to 12 months. So 27% for up to 6 months and 21% for 7 to 11 months there. So that is a significant proportion of customers who expect their concerns will remain. And then you've even got a third, or 29%, who expect to be concerned about queuing for between 1 to 5 years. So 21% for 1 to 2 years and 8% for up to 5 years. Which is really interesting to see. And then you've got this 10% here who say that they're going to be concerned forever. So we're not sure if they were just always concerned about shopping in stores, or they really think COVID is going to have a long-term impact on them, which is interesting. So what can we learn from these insights? First of all, that online shopping amongst the older generations has grown, and it will continue to do so. So retailers probably will be building their omni-channel offerings with older generations more in mind than they might have had to before the pandemic. So that's quite interesting to think about. Also, that in-store experience must be prepared for the younger generations, who are the most eager to return, but also the most concerned. And these are the consumers that want to be managed in more digital ways. They want consumers to engage with them in more digital ways, and they want to be building relationships with their brands. So how can retailers do all of this whilst also kind of keeping them safe and giving them confidence to come back to stores? We also found that both generations are still concerned about COVID-19, and some of them expect to do so for the long term. So making kind of customer experience feel really seamless and safe is very important to getting customers to come into store confidently. And the business case shows that there is a long business case. We've got some more stats on appointment booking specifically, but the fact that customers expect to be concerned a third for kind of up to 5 years suggests that any tools retailers implement will definitely have a long-term benefit to them. So these are some of the ways that we've seen retailers responding, particularly the ways that we're helping retailers with. So the first one being appointment scheduling for store visits and in-person services. So enabling customers to schedule a time just to visit store to browse at their own leisure, or schedule times to kind of go in and receive in-person service and advice, or scheduling time to kind of actually stay at home and from the comfort of their own home, speak with someone by phone or video at a fixed time. Curbside or doorside pickup of online orders, so enabling customers from their phone to check in for an order, and that can then be brought to them either out in their car, in the car park, or on the curbside, or if they're on foot, they can kind of just wait by the door and someone can bring them their order. Also, walk-in and virtual queue management is a really interesting one, particularly as we're heading up towards kind of holiday peak. So enabling customers to check in from their phone if they want that. So if customers are coming to store on a walk-in basis and they want service, they can either check in from their phone or via kind of physical kiosk, or a lot of our retailers will just have a host with a tablet that greets customers, takes their details, calculates the wait time for them, sends them text messages, and then that enables them to kind of stay updated while they wait, whether that's outside of store or even just in store. They can kind of wait in a more dispersed way than in a physical wait line. And then we've got virtual events as well. So retailers are kind of holding kind of fixed workshops and classes that many customers can attend, and enabling customers to easily schedule onto those online from their own website, as you can see Samsung doing here. So yeah, next we wanted to focus on the appointment booking space. So we're seeing it being an incredibly fast growing space in 2021 within retail and banking. You've got a number of articles that have reported on this kind of rise of the appointment economy concept, where customers are kind of just more and more able to book appointments. And we survey customers across industry in terms of where did they want to be able to schedule appointments. And we found that every single industry, across every single retail industry, at least 70% of their customers want to be able to schedule at least one type of appointment. So there's a big reason and incentive for any retailer to offer appointment scheduling. So you've got even kind of hardware retailers, 70%, and then you've got opticians and eyewear, 88% at the top, and kind of all these different industries in between. We have a report for each industry as well, so how these insights look for your specific industry, which you're very welcome to download. If you don't have the link, just let me know after the webinar and I can send it across. So we asked customers which types of appointments they wanted to be able to schedule. So the first one being in-store services, just booking a time to come in and speak to an advisor, which was the most popular, which was wanted by 38% of customers on average across these different types of retailers. A quarter of customers want to be able to book virtual service by phone or video. So that came up as the third most popular in most industries. And then the second most popular was 28% of customers want to be able to book appointments just to visit stores to shop. So kind of having a dedicated time, having a plan for their day, and potentially a bit more space while they're doing that. And then we had, so over on average across the different industries, it works out as 77%. But this varies by different types of retailer. So we looked at pharmacy and grocery. Well, we looked at all these other industries, but just some of the highlights from this report. So the patterns are very similar across them in terms of which types of appointments people want to be able to book, except interestingly in fashion and travel, where customers were much more likely to want to book virtual appointments within fashion than they were in other industries, which was really interesting. And fashion had the greatest interest in appointments to visit stores to browse or shop. But you've still got pretty high across every other industry. And we saw that across all these different, well, actually, we can go into the generation insights in a moment and how those look generically. So then we looked at kind of in-store service appointment demand across the different industries. So the other chart I showed by industry was at least one type of appointment. This is focused on who wants to be able to schedule appointments for service. And we found that interest was highest in the stores where product value was the highest. So opticians, cars, banks, automotive, and then also where kind of service was essential to the kind of support people would want. So pharmacies, pet stores, phone retail, home and furniture. We then looked at virtual appointment demand and found that, again, there's definitely a correlation between higher value products and customers more likely to want virtual service by phone or video. So you've got travel agencies right up there at the top, phone retail, luxury product, electronics, beauty, in even jewelry. And then you've got kind of your lower product values here, kind of grocery stores or stores where just having virtual service doesn't make quite as much sense. But even in opticians and eyewear retail, where you think most people just want to book appointments to go in and have an eye test, actually there's even a quarter of customers, 23%, wanting to be able to schedule time just to speak with someone by phone or video, potentially as a kind of a triaging type appointment. And then you've got store visits, so the different customers that want to be able to schedule appointments just to browse and visit stores. It definitely shows kind of a correlation between the types of stores where browsing is kind of equally as useful within the store as it is kind of receiving service. So fashion is somewhere you definitely go to browse, jewelry stores are where you kind of also go to browse, beauty, somewhere where you might just want to go and try out makeup by yourself, home and furniture, cars. So customers want to be able to kind of book their own time to come in these stores, luxury as well. Whereas it was kind of slightly less of interest in somewhere like banks, where there's probably not a lot to do to go in and browse, and travel agencies as well. So we definitely saw a correlation between higher job seniority and increased likelihood of wanting to be able to schedule appointments. So you've got your C-level execs at 87% here versus your entry level and intermediate level at 73, 75%, and people who don't work at 71%. So this attests to the business case of offering appointment scheduling will help you attract kind of higher value customers. Because it will save them time and kind of give them their time back and build longer term relationships by respecting their time as well. And we also found appointment scheduling demand by age group. There was a significant correlation, an exact correlation between younger age groups and increased likelihood of wanting to be able to schedule an appointment in these different types of stores. So 82% for Gen Z, 79% for millennial versus 67% for baby boomer. So again, these millennial and Gen Z customers are growing massively in consumer spending power. Millennials are forecast to account, I think it was either a quarter or 30% of consumer spending power by over the next kind of 5 to 10 years. So these are the customers we want to be attracting into stores more and more. And these stats are only going to grow as we get more generations come out. So the time is now to kind of be ahead and offer appointment services to attract these customers and the generations that are to follow. We found that both age groups are equally interested in appointments to come into store for service, so kind of physical in-person services. But there's a definite difference between millennial and Gen Z versus baby boomer for virtual service. So they're twice as likely to want to be able to schedule appointments for virtual services, although there's still interest from baby boomers. So it's definitely these customers can also be captured by that service. And again, then you've got there's a slight difference between millennial and Gen Z customers being more likely to want to schedule appointments to browse and visit stores, compared to still a quarter of baby boomers, as opposed to kind of a third of millennial and Gen Z customers. And then overall, you've got 81% of them more likely to want to schedule at least one kind of appointment than baby boomers. So next, we wanted to understand this increased appointment demand that we were seeing kind of in those results just then in May 2021. How did consumers feel these were going to be impacted as the vaccine rolled out and COVID became less of a threat? And we found that definitely the pandemic has driven demand for appointments, but that demand will continue. So we asked customers during the pandemic, how likely will you be to schedule an appointment compared to before the pandemic? And we looked at it across those 3 different types of appointment. But we found that 46% overall said they were more likely than before the pandemic to want to schedule an appointment. And after the pandemic, 43% still said they were more likely to want to be able to schedule an appointment after the pandemic compared to before the pandemic. So definitely that growth is going to continue. We then looked at that by age generation and again saw that millennial and Gen Z customers were much more likely after the pandemic to want to continue using appointment scheduling service. And they're pretty much on par with their interest during the pandemic as they are after the pandemic, whereas that interest drops slightly for the baby boomer generation. And again, we asked customers, we segmented that by whether customers believe in COVID-19 or not. And we found that actually, interestingly, the customers that don't believe that COVID-19 is real were more likely to want to be able to schedule an appointment after the pandemic. So there's definitely customers who aren't concerned about COVID, but they still want to be able to schedule appointments and think retailers should do it more so after the pandemic. We wanted to then understand who's used an appointment scheduling service recently in order to understand how they felt they interacted with it and how it changed their relationship with the brand. So we found that there was a definite correlation between younger age generations and their increased likelihood of scheduling an appointment recently in the last 12 months. So 52% of Gen Z customers, 45% of millennials versus kind of just a quarter of baby boomers. And again, by job seniority as well, more senior professionals were much more likely to have scheduled an appointment over the last 12 months than those in kind of less senior jobs. So 71% for your business owners and C-level execs versus kind of 45% for your intermediate and entry-level jobs. We then asked them, so if you scheduled an appointment in the last 12 months, how did it interact? How did it kind of affect you and your interaction with the retailer moving forward or in that moment? And we found that 93%, so not too far off 100%, said that it had at least one positive impact on them in terms of increased sales, increased loyalty, increased advocacy. So that's a massive business case benefit for every single customer, almost. And so, for example, 33% said it made them more likely to visit the retailer in the first place. So this shows that appointment scheduling can be used to acquire customers. 24% said it drove them to be more likely to buy something from the retailer, or no, sorry, it actually drove them to buy something from the retailer. So that's a quarter of customers who are more likely to convert as a result. 21% said it drove them to tell their friends about the retailer. So that's 1 in 5 more likely to advocate the retailer as a result of scheduling an appointment. 25% said it drove them to choose the retailer over their competitors. So again, that's a quarter of customers that you can kind of steal from competitors by offering in-store virtual appointments. And 29%, so almost a third, said that it made them more likely to return to the retailer. So that's a big loyalty element as well that we're building through appointment scheduling. So if you quantify these results financially, so say the average retailer with 100 stores and that's making 200 appointments per month, which we've seen some of our clients make many more per month, and an average transaction value of about $54 is going to increase their per store per annum revenues by 99K, so $99,000 per store. If you look at that then across 100 stores, that's potential to make 9 million additional revenue across all of those stores. 33.3 million is coming from the direct sales. And sorry, these should have dollar marks next to them. I'm obviously from the UK, so I got a bit stuck there. So 33.3 million is in direct sales. So that's the 24%, a quarter of customers who said that they're more likely to buy something because of the appointment scheduling service. And 66 million, which is resulting from these 29% who are more likely to return to the retailer, so the loyalty element, and the 21% who are more likely to tell their friends, assuming that 33% of those friends will then be more likely to visit the retailer because of what they've heard. So that's massive, massive benefit, and definitely outweighs by far the cost of buying an appointment scheduling service. So most of our clients are making back the cost of using an appointment scheduling service on just the first appointment customer that they have of every month. So we also found that, interestingly, the Millennial and Gen Z customers were the most likely to buy something because of an appointment scheduling service, and also the most likely to tell their friends about the retailer. So again, with these groups growing in spending power, appointment scheduling becomes a really important tool to leveraging the value that you could be gaining from these customers and building with them as loyal customers as well. And again, we found a very strong correlation between higher job seniority and increased likelihood of being driven to buy something after using an appointment scheduling service. So C-level execs, not quite so much, but they do appreciate the time efficiency, as we've seen in the earlier insights. But business owners, 32%, and senior management at 28%, compared to your entry level at 22%, and those that don't work at 16%. So definitely, again, a really strong business case benefit there. We asked customers what they liked about appointments, so understanding why it was useful to them. And we found that in the present context, 32% liked the idea because it reduced their risk of contracting COVID-19. But still not far behind is the fact that it's more efficient and it saves the customer time, and it kind of appreciates them as a person by doing so. It also allows customers to plan their day better, and that was a quarter of customers, and a quarter of customers also said it allows them to better prepare for what they want to discuss. And that has also a conversion benefit for the retailer, because the customers are turning up more prepared for their appointment, and therefore hopefully they're more likely to buy. And we have seen that with our customers, that it's a big kind of driver of greater conversion with appointments because they're more prepared. We then wanted to ask customers how they felt kind of which channels they wanted to be able to use to schedule an appointment, to understand what retailers should be looking to implement first in order to implement this software. And we found that there were some slight differences between Millennial and Gen Z. So overall, by calling the store was as the second most popular, and through the company's website was the first. But you can actually see here, baby boomers were the most interested in calling the store, whereas Millennial and Gen Z customers were more likely to want to use the website, only slightly actually. So what this shows for a retailer is that to kick off with offering appointments, you only need to equip your store team and also kind of include appointment scheduling from the website. And that should drive most of the traffic to you. We also found, interestingly, that customers were kind of third most likely to want to schedule an appointment in person through the store associate. And they were more likely to want to use the store associates than calling the call center, probably because they're used to kind of being put on hold, and call center conversations can just take a lot longer. We found that, interestingly, Millennial Gen Z customers were more likely to want to use a general appointment scheduling app, so some kind of centralized app where I can book appointments across different retailers, compared to baby boomers who were more likely to want to use just the individual company's app. And that might be that consumers have more and more the younger consumers have more and more apps on their phones, so maybe they want to decrease that, or maybe they're just used to using these kind of centralized apps to do that handle everything they want to do. You can see customers here wanting to use a QR code from an advert, 7 times more likely for the younger generations than the baby boomers. But if 14% of younger generations are willing to kind of scan a QR code from a poster or a print advert, it's a great way to drive traffic into store, to be able to kind of include the booking link in your communications and marketing content. So all these other channels can be added on later on to further bolster appointment traffic, but starting with the website and equipping the store team is all you really need to do to get going with appointment scheduling. Then to summarize, we just asked customers directly, do you think more retailers should offer appointment scheduling services during the pandemic and after the pandemic? And we found that the results were pretty much on par. So half of customers agreed that more retailers should offer appointment scheduling services after the pandemic, and that's across store visits, virtual services, and in-person services, compared with 52%, so still very similar during the pandemic. So it really suggests that COVID-19 has been a catalyst for a new omnichannel appointment scheduling trend that is here to stay. And we're seeing the industry experts kind of catch on to this theme with some of the writings I shared earlier. So just to conclude on some of those key insights. So we showed how online shopping habits have changed for good, and particularly amongst the older generations, and that's something retailers might want to think about when they're designing their new omnichannel plans. Customers are still eager to get back to store, particularly the younger generations, but they don't feel confident to do so. They are still definitely concerned despite having had the vaccine. So retailers need to find more interesting kind of useful ways of managing the in-store experiences and giving customers the confidence, whether it's keeping mask policies in place or using appointment scheduling and queuing tools to better manage customers when they're in stores. We found that the pandemic has definitely increased demand for appointment scheduling amongst all types, so the in-store services, virtual appointments, and just browsing and visiting stores. And that's across every type of retail industry and for every type of age, generation, and job seniority. And we're also seeing, therefore, that the business case is incredibly powerful. So we've seen that appointments have proven to increase sales, increase customer loyalty, and increase customer advocacy amongst at least a quarter of customers for each of those elements. And this is really proven in the kind of case studies that we build with our clients when they work with us using our software. And as I said in the last point, the preferred appointment scheduling methods, which are calling the store and scheduling appointments online, show that it's really easy to offer appointment scheduling. Just equip the stores with access to the system and offer an appointment booking option on the website, and you're ready to go. Everything else can be added later to further bolster traffic, or maybe not at all. Just using the stores and the website is enough. So just to summarize what we do, so we've been helping leading brands to drive omnichannel sales and loyalty, particularly kind of thinking about the safe store environment, but also the kind of retail future environment as well, and how the pandemic has changed it. So our core solutions are appointment scheduling, enabling customers to schedule appointments virtual queuing or kind of waitlist management. So customers want to walk-in customers come into store unplanned. They want to speak to someone, adding them to a queue and sending them updates about when their turn will be. Contactless order pickup, which is enabling customers to kind of check in from their phone and receive updates about when their order is ready and have it even brought to them. We also do occupancy tracking, which we built during the pandemic, kind of at the height of the pandemic. So enabling your stores to basically count how many customers are coming in store, and when the store reaches capacity, customers are encouraged to book an appointment or join the virtual wait line. And then you've got event booking as well. So customers booking onto fixed events that are taking place. And we also, across all of that, help our clients to better manage the shop floor and their tasks and everything that's going on. So really being your kind of one tool to choreograph both your customers and your colleagues across the store. So thank you for watching. And if anyone has any questions, I'd be very happy to take them.